It's not that these forms contain consciousness. That's a complete misunderstanding. Like a human form is not a form that contains or is having consciousness. That is the opposite, actually. There is only consciousness assuming, carrying forms, energetical forms. Huh? So what we really are is consciousness carrying a body. Consciousness is the container, not the body is the container of consciousness. So we are not conscious being, we are consciousness expressing itself as a human form. We are aware of a multiplicity of forms. These forms seem to be different from one another, isn't it? What is the nature of the perfect oneness or the seamlessness of all the forms that we perceive? What is exactly the same? Because if you say that the basic elements, like the atoms, are the same for almost all forms, but the combination is different, then there's a difference in the combination. So you must see what is the same beyond the atomic structure. And what is that?
The essence.
Sorry? The essence. And the essence, yes. And that what? Sorry? The source. Okay. Yes. And we have a name for that. Consciousness, yes. So all there is, actually, basically, primordially, is, you can say, chit. That is one way to name it from the categories of our mind. It's still a human concept. Unless you experience it directly, then the concept will drop. The moment you try to express that or to point to that with language, then consciousness is a good term. If you add the pure consciousness or absolute consciousness, that is a consciousness that is not mixed with anything, that is pure in itself. Because we have an experience of consciousness, but that consciousness is mixed. It's a mental consciousness. Or you can say the mental consciousness comes in the form of a dream consciousness, in the waking consciousness, and the deep sleep consciousness. Or the consciousness in the state of coma, etc. So these forms of consciousness are only associations of consciousness with form. Here is mind. So you understand now the meaning of pure or absolute. That means consciousness alone with itself. Pure consciousness, unmixed, unassociated. Because we should have a clear definition of the words we are using. Then they become efficient pointers. So what is everywhere the same, seamlessly? That is this chit, consciousness. Another way to speak about that, to express it in words, is sat. That means being. And the Gyanis will say, you have to add something there, that is bliss. Because this is the perfect joy or happiness. Again, we come back to our human categories. But what is the joy that is unmixed with anything? Unmixed with events, relations, circumstances, causes. That is a perfect joy. Francesco of Assisi. The perfect joy is a whole story in the Fiorettis about what is the perfect joy. Or also the causeless joy. Or the pure joy. or the objectless joy. We need also to bring now this concept to point to that, to this nature of the being. So it's pure consciousness and it is pure joy, ever uncaused. It is joy itself. So you see, these words come from our human experience because we experience joyful circumstances. So we have an idea about what we mean by joy. It's the opposite of sadness. And there is a kind of ease and fullness and fulfillment there. Right? It's hard to define joy. Try for yourself, what is joy? It's hard to define. Yet we have the experience of it. So we take the same word to point to that reality, the nature of everything, and that is pure joy. If our joy is always depending on something, that joy does not depend on anything, and it is joy at its fullest. So therefore, the one unique reality without a second, Eka Evam Advitiya, that is called Brahman, that is Sat, absolute being, Chit, absolute consciousness, and Anand, absolute bliss. So all there is, throughout all the universe and the universes, because we don't know. The mystics say there are several universes, not just one. It's all Sat, Chit, Anand. Now, you speak about that perfect being, perfect consciousness, but what we see here, sorry to say, it's not perfect. That is now the philosophical conclusion. We are just reflecting together. We come slowly, gradually to the nature of awakening. It's clear that here we have, at the level of this manifestation, an association between the perfect, the infinite, the limitless, with a realm of limitation, the finite realm. That means energy, the energetical realm, the vibration of consciousness. There, limitations are. So the infinite is associating itself with the finite when and whilst it is vibrating. The moment consciousness vibrates in itself, by itself, there is no other reality than consciousness. It expresses itself through limitation, the finite. The infinite expresses itself as the finite. The timeless, the eternal, the unborn expresses itself as the born, the time, the form, because that unique reality is formless, but it expresses itself as form. So it means that in itself, the infinite assumes the finite. And that means this imperfection, the phenomenal, energetical imperfection, what we perceive, the limitation, is already assumed. So in other terms, that these limitations are an expression of the limitless. The imperfection is an expression of the perfection. So all there is perfection in the form of imperfection. This samsara is nirvana. We agree on that, I hope. So now, what is the point of awakening? When this is understood, we understand intellectually. Intellectually. Because, you see, the confusion is also intellectual. So, there is no harm to find out or to ponder over this intellectually, because the mind is responsible for the confusion. So we have to correct something, to fix something at the level of mind. This is a part of knowledge. In the part of knowledge, clear understanding is needed. First, come to the clear understanding. That's why viveka, discernment, comes first. And then the friend of viveka, otherwise without this friend it will misguide you, that is dispassion. Because you can discern the real from the unreal, but unless you have dispassion, it will never be actualized in your life. To actualize your fine discernment, you need dispassion. As long as you are attached, you are blind. So dispassion is a must, and it is a must in all spiritual path. It is the beginning of the path, dispassion. You cannot go on any of this path without dispassion. But viveka is of uttermost importance on the path of jnana, clarification of the understanding. Okay. So now we understand that all is actually that perfect being, perfect reality, perfect consciousness, perfect existence, expressing itself through apparent energetical dynamic limitations. So what I really see through these limitations, through the universe, is actually the perfect. All there is this the same consciousness. There was never a separation. You were never separated from the absolute consciousness. Not a single second, not a split second. You were never separated. You see the power of this conviction, if you integrate that conviction in the mind, that is the power of this journey. The moment you are absolutely convinced, beyond doubt, that you are this perfection, you are this fullness. What happens in the awakening process? You see that consciousness is vibrating, and it is ever one with this energetical expression. And we clearly see that forms tend to become sentient. We just notice that, because we are not the planner, we are not the interior architect of divine consciousness. It's a sort of inner decoration. So we just notice that it seems that forms tend, after a long, long process in so-called time, to become sentient. That means, is it extraordinary that this energy is actually totally transparent. Totally transparent. Wherever you look at a mountain, a river, you look at a whole galaxy, these forms are not solid in that sense, or are not an opacity. They are all transparent. Now we get a confirmation from the animal realm. You see? Now the animals come to our rescue. You see? All you see ever through your phenomenal perceptions is actually consciousness. What is really seeing in a sentient form is consciousness. So now I come to that. We see that forms, physical forms, phenomenal forms, seem to evolve towards sentiency. That means more and more transparency. It's not that these forms contain consciousness. That's a complete misunderstanding. Like a human form is not a form that contains or is having consciousness. That is the opposite, actually. There is only consciousness assuming, carrying forms, energetical forms. Huh? So what we really are is consciousness carrying a body. Consciousness is the container, not the body is the container of consciousness. So we are not conscious being, we are consciousness expressing itself as a human form. So what we see in the evolution, that forms tend to be transparent. In this association of consciousness with form, because the whole expression, the whole manifestation, or call it creation, is consciousness associating itself with its own vibration. So it's an association. And when forms become more and more transparent, this association becomes more intimate at an experiential level, because it's ever intimate. There is only that. It cannot be more intimate than what it is. It is completely intimate because it is one. You cannot go further. It's one, absolutely one. But phenomenally, experientially, it seems that there is a growing or deepening of intimacy. That means association between consciousness and its own vibration. This is a process. This is a process. And this process also is assuming, it's impersonal of course, is assuming limitation. So by associating with forms, consciousness assumes, so to say, you understand, these are very temporary human mental categories, and we have to drop all of this. It's, at the end it's nonsense, but anyway, now we try to come to a clarity of understanding. Consciousness associating with its own vibration assumes the limitation in this expression. Now, when the forms becomes more and more transparent, we speak about sentiency. So forms clearly become sentient. So the contradiction here in the human condition is that it seems to be full sentiency, because there is awareness, which is again a mode of consciousness, the same consciousness, that unique reality, now here assumes a mode of expression which is the subtlest of all modes of expression. Yet it is a mode of expression. So the contradiction is that here you have sentiency at its maximum, yet this subtle expression of awareness is still ignoring the profound nature, the real nature of this human form, and goes into a story. And the story comes from where? From the mind. The story is superimposed on this, on the shining of consciousness in the form of awareness. It is superimposed. It's a fiction. You see, so this is the tragedy, the predicament of this human form, this human species. And why there is so much violence? Because there is no recognition. The moment you recognize what you are, there will be constant peace and constant joy. We go into a full contraction, and therefore there is violence, competition, etc. So there are so many conclusions. Now I want to go to all these conclusions. If the limitation of the human form as an equipment that is transparent to consciousness in the form of awareness is definitely limited. It carries its own limitations. So then this can only be accepted as a matter of fact. Are you responsible for that? No. Consciousness knows better. Because it is the unfoldment of consciousness. So consciousness knows already that it is expressing itself in a limited form. The unborn manifests as the born. The timeless as time. The spaceless as space. Huh? So it is already assumed. Is there any individual being there in one equipment? No. There is only one life, one existence, one reality. One supreme intelligence, you can say. That is at the level of energy. There is no other center, only one center, and that is the totality. No separate centers. So, if that particular form says, I am enlightened, you have missed the point. Something is not complete. Because it is the enlightenment of what? Because all is that consciousness. But when there is enlightenment, it means that the transparency has come now to its completion. That now nothing is distorted in this transparency. Awareness is flowing freely without any hindrance created by the mind. But if there is still someone there to say that I am enlightened, then for sure that enlightenment is not complete. It's only a partial view. You are still in the story created by the mind, the individual story. Now it is a story of an enlightenment, the story of an awakening. So all this is to tell that there cannot be an individual enlightened being. And if you understand this now, never forget. Never forget. This is a misperception, a misunderstanding. All the sages said, like Ramana Maharshi, there is only jnana, and jnana, as we have seen many times, is a synonym for consciousness. All there is consciousness. Consciousness being that perfect knowledge, it knows itself. It's not an accumulated conceptual knowledge. It's not based on data. Nothing like that. It's beyond experience. It's beyond even the empirical world. So all there is jnana. Jnanis are not there. That's just a conventional term for people who are still spiritually blind. This awakening, when there is full transparency, when awareness still associates with the mind, but in a way that doesn't hinder or hide its own nature, and where it is shining, there is clear knowledge of swarupa, swabhava, that means your own true nature. There is clear recognition of your own true nature. That is when this awareness flows freely. And there is no more adhyasa, means superimposition. You have gone beyond the upadhis, that means the apparent limiting forms. No limitation is there. Limitations are still there at the level of equipment, but not in the seeing. So you have come to the profound seeing, to the pure seeing, to the clear seeing. All kinds of things are happening. I'm surprised that we have not heard the... So it will come. It will come. When the clear seeing appears, occurs. And we have seen it's a process. It's a process. Are you the cause of it? That means, is the cause your practice, your efforts? Just think about can you say that when it occurs, it is due to your practice, to your efforts, to your specialness, to your highness, to your pure soul? No. No. Because, you know why? It was meant to happen. And you, as the individual being, never existed. Because to say that there is a direct relation or connection between your practice, your efforts, your deep understanding, your association with a great guru, etc., that means it's another way to come back to your personal individual identity. So there's still an I hiding itself and make something personal. You know, it's my efforts, of course. I spent 30 years in total seclusion in the desert, in the mountain. I had the greatest guru because my good karma. Actually, I've been on the path for the last 2 centuries. So that's why it happened. It is not like that. So the whole process is completely impersonal. That means no person is there. It's impersonal. Does it make any difference at the level of consciousness? Is consciousness now deeply touched by your awakening? Are you impacting consciousness? No. You see, it doesn't make any difference in consciousness or for consciousness. Everything, everywhere is the same. It's not like you are contributing to consciousness, that you are facilitating the radiance, the pure radiance of consciousness. And you see, another myth is the myth of teaching others and being a missionary. Like you have come because you feel an inner call to tell all the human beings that they need to awaken this life. What a nonsense. Just think about. To feel that there is a mission here, then it is for sure the sign that you are not in the pure awakening or pure enlightenment. Because already you feel that there is a difference, that you are enlightened and there are so-called others over there that are not enlightened, that you have to bring them, but them, they don't exist. You can't find unenlightened beings in the same way that you can't find enlightened beings. Because all is that perfectly everywhere at all times. It's like consciousness preaching to consciousness. And it is a nonsense because it is not in your hands. It is not in your control. It's out of your hands. Whether consciousness will come to this free flow here and not there, it is not in your control. You cannot push it. You are not a facilitator. Only consciousness is facilitating itself. This is the full meaning of Advaita. That reality is absolutely one. The problem is that those who follow this path, they don't stick to it. And they go in the multiplicity, in the duality. They create more and more duality in their relations, in everything, in their choices. Choice is a category that is totally irrelevant when we come to consciousness. It's okay for human beings, for animal beings, but for consciousness there can't be anything like choice. Now, for the one who is not really existing, but had a feeling of individual existence, this big shift, I will speak now also about the shift. This big shift happens. It will impact the equipment, and emotions will be like immense gratitude. Immense gratitude. And it is only at this level that the category of choice comes. And such a being can only say that I am the unworthy so-called person, or seeker, or sadhaka, that now has been chosen. Because it was never your choice. It has come to you independently. So there's a feeling that, you see, like in a lottery, some people are committed to an intense sadhana for 30 years, but they cannot make it. And some people do sadhana for 2 years, also intense, and they come to full awakening. Don't try to understand, because all this is not due to preference. You see, again, that preference is a human concept. It's not a choice of consciousness. It's a fully impersonal process, and you can't understand with the mind what is behind that. But definitely not the criteria of a human mind. The word choice is a pure projection, a human interpretation, that now you felt that I'm totally unworthy, because I tried my best for 30 years, but still all my shortcomings are there. I feel myself very selfish, egoistic. So now, this fullness, how come? What I have done for that? So there's a deep feeling for the equipment. That means at the level of your emotions, at the level of mind, of not deserving, and therefore there is incredible gratitude. I don't know anyone who had awakening who said, I deserve it. If you have met such a person, please introduce to me. It's not possible. It is not possible. No one will tell, of course I'm enlightened. You see, 30 years of practice. Huh? No, it's impossible. Just impossible. There's a feeling of, at the human level, at the level of mind and emotions, of being unfit, unworthy. And yet, incredible gratitude, because you feel grateful to whom or to what? In my childhood, I believed in Santa Claus, and I want to thank for all the gifts and the toys, etc. And my parents would go to the garden and shout in the garden, thank you, Santa Claus. So I did it for 3-4 years. Then more reflection came, and I understood that all these Santa Claus in the shops, they're not the same. They look very different from each other. So I told my friends, my classmates, I'm sure it does not exist. Anyway, I felt sad for them because, it's like a whole belief, now collapse. But there's more belief that have to collapse. Because our parents have told us the wrong thing, Okay, if they tell you to do good and always to be generous and always to help unconditionally, that's fine. That's the good part. But the wrong part is that they kept solid the belief that we are human beings, personal beings, you see? So how gracious it is to be born in a family where the father or the mother or both are awakened. You see? This is a perfect environment. And I've seen these children awake in due course of process, before the age of 20. I'm not sure if they remain there, but there is an awakening for sure. Because you see, a child is not the child of the parent. It's just a conditioning coming from remote places. Transmission of vasanas, sanskaras, and genes. And so these vasanas are different from one child to another, and they may activate or reactivate. Then I'm not sure if they will remain in that steady awareness. So it's not that when they awake before 20 that they will remain there. Because you see, youth is fine, but then it carries all dreams. And then they have to go for their dreams first. First explore. They want to go for a world tour, they go for the world tour. They want to have many girlfriends or boyfriends. So okay, you need to go through all this process. See? So it seems that what Yud is saying that Yud is blind. So now we come to the practice. There is so an understanding of that that will avoid any re-identification to your state of enlightenment. I cannot be enlightened as a person. Enlightenment is only of consciousness. Consciousness is recognizing itself here through this equipment. You see, there's an association of consciousness with a form, and that is through awareness. Awareness is the bridge between consciousness and the form. That is the mystery, the secret of sentiency. It is consciousness somehow associating fully in the form, but in that mode of awareness. Now, the mind superimposes things there all the time. It is because the repetitive superimposition that eventually you come into a belief. If the first time you see a mirage in the desert and you are with your parents and your parents tell you right from childhood, there is no water there, no once and forever, that this is a mirage, it's an optical illusion, so never believe it. But we have not been told that over millennia, and therefore by repeating the same pattern, the hindrance, the superimposition of the mind with awareness, we have come into a belief. By looking at the same all the time, all the time, all the time, then you eventually believe it. And that is the nature of identification. Because for the jnani, the mind is also superimposed as a processor, as your domestic computer, but you don't go into a belief. You see clearly the play of the mind. It is especially true in the first awakening when still vasanas come up. But you see now the play and you understand and you don't touch because you see it, okay, this is mind. This is not me. This is mind. Thoughts, emotions, data of the mind are not yours. So see that clearly every moment. So all you need is attention. So this identification is due to lack of attention. Pramada. Absence of attention. No, we need attention. Don't say ignorance. It's because you are distracted by the play, the mechanism of the mind. It is not you. You are the seeing. You are that which sees and is already free from all that is appearing. Fear is not yours. You see now this process of awakening. It is when the play of the mind is clearly seen and there can't be any identification. Now there is clear perception. And then from the clear perception there is freedom. Because there was bondage. So freedom of whom, of what? Of the equipment. Don't say freedom of consciousness. When you say I am free, it is not true. Again you come back with the I. You cannot say I am mukta, means free. All there is beyond freedom and bondage. Na moksha na bandha. No liberation, no freedom, and no bondage, ever. So the one who is, so to say, awakened, but there is no one as such, who would say like, no, I'm free. Again, it's a lie, it's a fiction, a new identification, a story. You can say there is gratitude, yes, of the system, gratitude of the system, gratitude in the heart, gratitude of all this energetical body here, gratitude, yes. This freedom at the level of the system, yes. A huge burden was removed. So there's a complete release, But not you, not I.